All right. Welcome. This is the Greater Boston NLP and Hypnosis Meetup, a personal development meetup that actually focuses on NLP and hypnosis. For those of you that aren't members, our meetup is meetup.com/NLP-100. It's really easy. We've got a nice group, almost 700 members, and we have meetings online now once or twice a month. And sometimes we have wonderful, fantastic speakers coming in like we do tonight. NLP and hypnosis are things that are my background. I teach it, I use it, I work with people in the Boston community, and the interest in the meetup has been, okay, how can this stuff help me? And so if anyone is interested in how can this stuff help me, you're very welcome to join the meetup. You can either reach out to me on Facebook, or you can actually go to Meetup and look for the Greater Boston NLP and Hypnosis Meetup. Tonight, I am overjoyed to have Michael Levy as our speaker tonight. And you know, though has nothing to do with NLP and hypnosis, it has a lot to do with personal development, because personal development has a lot to do with how we see ourselves and how we see the world. So Michael is an author of 17 inspirational books on philosophy, poetry, and much more. Michael Levy has become the world leader on philosophy of truth and wisdom, although not many people know it. His 17 inspirational books have never been advertised, never marketed, and he feels authentic works will eventually find their place in humanity. And I really do, having spent some time talking with Michael and knowing about the content of some of these books, I really do believe this. Many experts may use erroneous intellectual reasoning, false, egotistical logic to explain answers that cannot be lived by natural people. You know, so he says that natural people don't exactly jive with or resonate with what those scholars say. At this point in time, schools, universities teach people to read and write to a good standard. However, they do not teach wisdom to the students and how to apply their learning for benefit of all humanity, not just a select few. Michael was an international radio host, keynote speaker on cruise ships, radio, and TV. Cruise ships, that's awesome. He still is available for a few select seminars, events, and talks. His books contain mystical poetry, business, investment, wellness, healthy living, mind, spirit, truth, philosophy, and metaphysics, and wisdom, and everything society needs to live a wholesome, in love, in joy life. His works can be found on numerous websites throughout the world. Michael understands he knows little, but has yet to meet or hear anyone who knows more. With all of that, I want to introduce Michael Levy. Michael?
Thank you, Kevin. Very nice introduction, and thank you for inviting me, and thank you for the people that taking time to listen to what I have to talk about tonight. Just to add one little thing to what you're saying, anybody that wants to look me up, my website is pointoflife.com. That's the end of me talking about anything to do with me. Right, so where do we start? Well, let's go back a while. In fact, let's go back a long while. Many moons ago, before our moon or even our Earth was even here, we were all sat in a waiting room, in a Zen-like nothingness, waiting for something to happen. And we were there a long time, even though time hadn't been measured yet. Then all of a sudden, something did happen. There was a loud explosion. We were blown out of a black hole. We blinked, and to cut a long story short, here we are. We're on Zoom, a new technology that is using the same stuff that the universe used to get us here. That's microwaves, magnetic wave bands. This is how we're communicating. We do that with cell phones. We do it with computers today. And it wasn't long ago where Marconi sent his first messages by Morse code. And since then, we've raced ahead, and now we're traveling ourselves at the speed of sound. And new things are developing every day in our lives. So where does that leave human beings on planet Earth? And how do we differentiate ourselves from the rest of the animal kingdom and the rest of the life forms that are on Earth? Well, in true essence, there is no difference. With the same energy and the same intelligence that every other life form has got. And indeed, when we were sat in that waiting room, we're waiting for that intelligence and energy to come and do something, to find something that it can adhere to that could give us this life here on Earth. And it's happened. How miraculous is that? And how is miraculous the fact that we're in different parts of the country? My voice is traveling on these microwaves and magnetic wave bands. And you can see me and hear me live. Again, miraculous. Just those little things when you think about it, what's going on? And actually, to actually get into Zoom, what did you have to do? First, you had to have an ID. Then you needed a password to get into the meeting. Well, this is the way our brains function. We need to know the passwords and the connections so we can live an authentic life on Earth. Now, over thousands of years, we've developed a conscious brain, and we've developed logic and reasoning. And then over time, we develop belief systems, varying belief systems. And some of these belief systems have caused conflicts and wars. And even today, they're doing the same thing. Conflicts and wars are going on throughout our little planet Earth. And here we are in our little life, wanting to live it with three facets to it. Now, if you ask most people in the world, what would you like to live in your life? Well, you'd like to live health, good health throughout your life. You'd like enough wealth, enough money to sustain yourself. And you'd like to live a happy life. And in the Constitution of America, it's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, we've got life. Question is, do we really have liberty? Do we really have freedom of thought? Or is that being controlled by influences that conditioned our brain? And we pursue happiness, for sure we're pursuing things, but how many people are really happy today? And happiness is a physical entity. It requires pleasure of things, relationships, tangible things that bring happiness. But there's a part of us that isn't tangible and is far more real. And it's that reality that's overlooked by nearly everybody in the world today. They haven't got time to actually go inside and find the core identity of who we really are. So I'm going to be going over that in this short talk I'm going to be giving, and see if we can translate that into a form of intelligence that'll sink in and you can take with you after tonight's talk. So, are we a prisoner of the mind? Well, if you're a professional, and like Kevin, he deals with people with habitual habits, and a lot of these habits can be, maybe somebody wants to go smoking, maybe alcoholic, maybe on drugs, many different habits that people formulate. And it could be depression, anxiety, fear, all these mental anxieties and fears that people get are real to those people. So yes, that's easily recognizable as people being locked into a mental jail, a mental prison. They can't break free of it, and it gets to the stage where they need professional help. And a lot of the time, they go to psychologists and psychiatrists, and they end up on some very strong medications. But there is a better way. And first of all, we've got to analyze the general public. How many people in the world today are living in a jail, in a mental prison, and they don't even know it? Well, surprisingly, nearly everybody. Now, you might think you're free, and you might think you've got free thought, and you might think, you know, not me, I'm not in that form at all. Well, it's not for me to recognize it, it's for the person themselves. So what are these mental jails that I'm talking about? Well, it could be a belief system, and the belief system could be maybe political. So one party on one aisle doesn't like the party on the other aisle. So that party and that party are locked in their own mental prisons, because that's what they're locked into. They can't see the views of the other side, and the other side can't see the views of that side. And they find it very difficult to come to terms with each other, which is going on now in America, because we've got an election coming up. And if you go on any social media, you can see people hating Trump or loving Trump. Got two sides. So again, people love the person or they hate the person. Those are dualities. And anything that's dualistic is also a prison camp. We might not think it is, but it has ramifications. It has ramifications with our health, with our digestive systems, and everything else that we're going to be living. But it doesn't happen overnight. This ease of the mind, when we're uneasy, can take a long time to manifest itself into a natural illness. But eventually it does. And most people will die of some kind of a disease. And it doesn't, again, there's a choice. It doesn't have to be that way. We do have a choice. Health is our choice. If we're born in what you call a natural way, and your genes and your DNA are born in a natural way, then you've got a very good chance of living a healthy life to 100 years of age, or even past that, with a fertile mind, lots of energy, and lots of intelligence. Remember, there's two words, because it's going to come up a lot: intelligence and energy. Because when we're in that meditating room, in that Zen state of being, it took energy and intelligence to get us here now. Those two factors is how we got here, how we became human. We became human by intelligence, and we became human by energy. Now, we have a very short lifespan, 100 years is only a blink. And in that time span, we have the energy to live our lives. And when the energy disappears, the life's over. And the intelligence goes along with it. But it only goes back to where we came from, in that zone of nothingness. Now we're living in that zone of nothingness here and now. It doesn't ever leave us. In fact, it's the main part of our being. It's actually the true identity of who we actually are. Now, as we start to formulate these different ideas, we have a perception, an idea, a thought, and a suggestion. And that formulates these ideas that we have, and it formulates our belief systems. When we were growing up as kids, we never really had a choice in the matter. And by the time a child reaches the age of 7, more or less, their personality is developed. And they're more or less going to live with the reference points brought on by the parents, the schooling, and the friends up to that point. And that can either expand, or perhaps a person, as they get older and time moves on, they might start thinking, well, what is it that's going on in my life? Am I really going down routes that's giving me anxiety and fear all the time? And what can I do about it? Now, there's another point. Every negative emotion that we have as human beings, every single negative emotion is a total illusion. Not one is real, although it seems real enough at the time we're experiencing it. Now, at this moment in time, we've got a pandemic in the world, and we're living in that pandemic, and most people are fearful of it. They're rightly being very cautious when they go out, but they shouldn't really be fearful. They should have an awareness. They should take precautions. But the fear itself attaches itself to part of the personality that we had as we were growing up. And that personality is our ego and our intellect. Now, our intellect is how we learn knowledge. But knowledge is not wisdom. And it may or may not be true, depending on where we're getting that knowledge from. Wisdom and truth don't alter. If wisdom has to prove itself to be wisdom, or it can't be wisdom. And both wisdom and truth comes from that intelligence form that we are part of too. So we have ourselves in a zone. I know this is kind of a little bit deep, and I'm going to put it into more practical terms shortly. But we've got to understand what's going on behind the scenes, because what we're actually doing here on Earth in our human existence, and because we're playing these roles out, we want to play these roles to perfection. We want to be good parents. We want to be good children to our parents. We want to be good to our relatives with kindness and love and gratitude for living our life on Earth. We want to perform as much kindness as we can for other people so they can pass that on to future generations. And that's a purposeful life to live. But interfering with all that is the everyday events that are going on that can deter us from living in that real state of mind. Now, what is it in actual terminology that we can understand that is the nothingness that lives within us, that isn't in an emotion, although it's classed as an emotion if you look at it in the dictionary? And the two things are love and joy. Those are eternal identities filled with intelligent energy. Now, if it's a religious person I'm talking to, then they can identify that intelligent energy as God. That's intelligent energy. And that's the best definition I know of God. And if it's a scientist who lives by mathematical equations and perhaps consider themselves to be an atheist or an agnostic, well, it's the same intelligence and energy that they're working on to give mathematical equations. You can't do anything without the intelligence. When the intelligence guides the intellect, you get eureka moments. And all the discoveries that we found, like gravity, magnetic wave bands, microwaves, all that was discovered. It's always been here. It's been filtering through the universe forever. But we're using that now as a form of communication, and gravity is used in different physics of ways of explaining things. A plane couldn't take off the ground unless Newton first of all discovered gravity. So we've had sages of the past, and all these sages have given us wonderful advice. But why isn't everybody living it? Why isn't everybody in a joyful state of mind every moment that they're alive? Now, here's the yardstick. And people say, well, how do I know if I'm in a mental prison? Well, that simple answer is, if you're not living in joy 24/7, 365, whatever thoughts are coming into your head, to take that love and joy from your center away, has put you into that mental prison. And it's going to turn into some kind of negative idea that you're going to have in your mind. Now, the negative ideas can come into your mind. Nobody's aloof from them. You can't dispel them. We just got these negative emotions. It's just part of our DNA and our makeup. But they're not real, but we deem them to be real. But as long as we understand we've got a sanctuary somewhere inside us that is real, and something inside us that can work things out for us and give us an answer to profound questions, then whatever that label is, we call it love and joy, but it's actually far deeper than that. It's labelless. It's not part. See, truth, absolute truth, it's a scientific fact, can't be known by the intellectual brain. We're not privy to it. But every cell in our body functions off absolute truth. It has to. The heart beats, the kidneys work, the liver's working. Every cell, billions of cells are working all the time. And they're working with absolute truth. They don't use an intellect. We use that in the little chestnut of our brain so that we can converse with people, and we can communicate, and we can do what we need to do to enjoy everything that Earth offers us. And indeed, we live in the most magnificent planet. There's beauty everywhere. Wherever we look, there's beauty in every single leaf, and none two leaves are the same. Zillions of leaves on every single tree, every blade of grass. Every part of nature has been formulated by this love and joy, this essence of stuff that is part of us. It's part of all the animal kingdom. The animal kingdom don't question it. They don't fear themselves, or they don't fear other animals. An antelope in the wild is aware of the prey, of the lions and the tigers that can eat it. But if it was fearful, it would freeze, it couldn't move, and it'd get eaten. But it knows to run away. Flight, fight mentality. It can't fight a lion, but it's faster than the lion and it can run away from it. And we human beings, in our so-called primitive form, say that, but perhaps we're living a bit more primitive today than we were when we first came on the planet. But in our primitive form, we had that flight, fight mentality. But over the centuries, as we become more civilized and we become more cultured and we live in the societies that we live in today, well, that has taken that flight, fight mentality away, and it's replaced it with a more placid lifestyle. So we have more chance to get adrenaline running through us and different things that are going through us that don't do us much good and can harm our immune system and harm our central nervous system and bring on disease. So without going over things in a too much of a deeper way, We are not our emotions. That's not who we are. We're not the identity we think we are. I'm Michael. I live as Michael, but I've learned to witness Michael and experience Michael rather than living as Michael. So I am the experiencer of what I'm doing. I am the witness of what I'm doing. But really, I'm not emotionally involved in it. I have an objective attachment to whatever is going on. And it's that objective attachment that can take us away from what could take us down. Now, I don't want to go again too deeply into this subject matter because, again, it can get quite deep. And I don't want to lose track of the practicality of what we need to live here on Earth. So, like I said, you need good health, you need enough money, and you want to be happy. So, first of all, let's talk about the health side of it. What can we do to give us good health throughout our lives? Well, it's easy. A bit of exercise we can do. That's fundamentally quite easy. A change of diet. That's not quite so easy. The best way to analyze ourselves basically is take all our clothes off, go and look in the mirror and say, do I like what I see? And can I do something about it in the next few years so I get back to the true state of what I want to live in the easiest way possible without putting any pressure on myself and without going on any fad diets, because no fad diet works. And the basic answer to that is that there's certain nutritions and foods that we human beings should be eating on a daily basis. And we can research it quite easily. One of the books I wrote was called Well, 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 Eat Well, Think Well, Live Well. And it's about understanding the types of foods, the good, the bad, and the ugly foods that can have an effect on our health, an effect on the size of what we are too. So whatever foods we're eating, the results will always speak for themselves. Now, the hard thing to combat is the taste buds that we've become accustomed habitually to wanting and crave. And those consist of mainly three things. It's either fat, sugar, or salt. Those are the three things that give our taste buds a tingle. So if it's dairy products you're eating and it's cheese, then it's the fat and the salt in the cheese that you're tasting. And basically, if you start to analyze it, all the foods that you're eating, if it's meat, you can taste the fat inside the meat. Now, if you're eating it all the time, you might not be so aware of it because you've become accustomed of it. But you give meat up for 6 months and try and get back to it, all you'll taste is fat. You'll taste nothing else but fat. And occasionally, I do have a piece of meat just to recognize that that meat and that fat wouldn't be doing myself much good. I'll have a few bites of it, taste of it, and then I understand why I gave it up. Same with dairy. We gave up dairy a long time ago, and giving up dairy alone is a massive increase into living more wholesome for yourself, for your body. So just dairy, all animal fats. As we age, maybe researching a few supplements. Most people past 40 even should start on probiotics, which put good bacteria into our gut. And you can start on a low regime of probiotics. But one of the best I found is Garden of Life Do On, which is 100 billion cultures in it. And that more or less takes care of your digestive tracts and the good bacteria inside your digestive tracts. Because inside each human being, there's two armies. There's the armies of the bad guys, and their only mission in life is to put us in the grave as early as possible. And there's the good guys that want to keep us alive, all the wholesome cells. Once we start changing our diet, then we start to magnify the good cells, they start to increase, and the bad cells start to decrease automatically until we get back down to the weight that we need to be at. And then you'll find a whole different energy form, a whole different way of what we feel about ourselves. That's just physical, and it's doable for those that want to take it on and do it. And there's more to it than that, but I'm just going through a few little points. Now, diet and exercise is only 5%. The other 95% is how we process our thought. Who is it that's controlling the brain? And how are we processing those thoughts? Where are the thoughts coming from? Are the thoughts coming from somebody that's deemed to be an expert, and we're going to take that on board and follow it without actually researching it? We'll just take it for granted because he's an eminent professor, or he's got degrees, accolades, things that he's seemingly achieved. But you really don't know what's going on inside his head, in his private life, or her head. And what is it that we've got lodged in our reference points that are creating the thoughts? And are we allowing our brain to open up to infinite possibilities of creating new thoughts, new ideas, fresh innovations, first for ourselves and then for other people to share? It's doable. Once you start opening your mind up to that universal flow of energy and intelligence, you'll start to amaze yourself. At first, you might think, what the heck is this? And it might be a little bit scary. But once it starts coming in and the change starts taking place, then automatically the rest of it, the exercise, the diet and everything else, the way we eat, the way we formulate every single day, takes on autopilot. We don't have to do anything about it. It handles itself. It's an effort to do it from intellectual means, way I said to begin with. But when we do it through our mental capacity of thought, and pure thought, authentic thought, which is far different to programmed thought, to conditioned thought, then results start peaking for themselves, and we find we're living in a perfect state of health, despite maybe growing up with weak genes. And we live to a ripe old age, whenever that will be, or not to be. We can't determine if tomorrow's even going to be here for us. But there's a better chance. Percentages are stacked on our side, not on the side of the bad guys inside us that want to take us down, and the bad thoughts inside our head that want to take away that love and joy. So predominantly, what we've got is two battlegrounds. The battleground within the body cells that they want to keep themselves in a good, perfect condition, and the battle of the thoughts that are going on in the brain, and the ones that want entrance. Remember, you can only have one thought at a time, and between each thought there's a small gap, and within all those gaps the neurons of the brain are flashing, and it's scientifically proven that if you smile, just a smile alone lights up the neurons of the brain, and it makes you feel a bit more contented. Now, even if it's a fake smile, it is doing something to our brain. But it's also better that we start analyzing the brain itself and understanding the way it's functioning. And once you start to analyze that, you get your eureka moments, and then you can find the avenue that you can start to do the cosmic dance here on Earth. Now, that's the health side to it. Now, you got the other side to the equation that I mentioned, which is the wealth side to it. So we need money. In today's world, you've got to have enough money to house yourself, clothe yourself and your family. If you're going to put kids through university, you've got to find the fees for that. Well, if you've got parents with some money, then the kids are lucky. But if somebody's going to study as a doctor and they haven't got any money, by the time they come out of college, they're going to end up with about $300,000 worth of debt. So they're saddled with that for a long time. That's quite a burden to carry. But they've made their mind up and they want to do good for people because they want to go into that kind of a profession. But unfortunately, today most doctors are trained in the medical field, and a lot of that is financed by the pharmaceutical companies. So predominantly, a doctor is dispensing medicine most of the time, a regular type of doctor. You do get holistic doctors, and you do get some other doctors who go a little bit deeper and try to find cause and effect. Because once we understand the cause of what is causing our problems, then we can eliminate the effect. But if you don't know what the cause is, or you're oblivious to it, you're ignorant of it, or you just don't want to know it, then you can't live the effect, and you're going to be living with the effect all your life. So the doctors aren't trained that way anymore. Maybe years ago, the old-fashioned doctors, you'd call them in the middle of the night, they'd come out to you, and they were true family practitioners. They loved what they were doing. But in today's world, it's more of a financial thing. And maybe it's not their fault because they've got debt and things to pay for, got lifestyles to maintain. They might marry a lady who's a trophy wife and she's a doctor's wife and she might want all the trappings of that. So they've got to live up to a lifestyle standard. And that's not always a happy way of going about things. And in the investment world today, we've got the stock market. And we have a stock market in America that the mentality today is buy on dips. So when the market comes off, maybe 1,000 points, which is nothing, where it's at today, there's people rushing in, buying on dips. Now, buying on dips is a good philosophy to invest, but not in a manic, massively overvalued market like it is now. It's totally manic. It's totally overvalued and has been for quite some time. But people have got used to it. And there's new generations of investors coming along who are going into a new trading platform called Robinhood, where they can buy fractions of shares. And more and more people are getting hooked into it totally at the wrong time. And the outcome is always the same. We only got to look at the annals of history, and the outcome is a major crash. And when it happens, the exits are all closed. And by the time you want to get out, you can't get out. And a lot of the companies that these high-tech flyers today might not be around in a few years' time. Just yesterday, a new company came on called Snowflake. It came on the market at 120, and within a few blinks of an eye, it was trading double at 240 and it went up to about 280. It doubled in value. It doesn't earn any money, and it's got big debt, but it's got cloud and cloud data, but there's massive competition in cloud data. So that company may not be around in a few years' time, but a lot of people have already piled into it, and they maybe have the mentality of saying they're a long-term holder. Well, there's no such thing as long-term holders. Nobody lives long-term. Each little investment that you make should be an investment, and you invest for one reason only. It's not an ego thing. You invest to make money. And when you make your money, you get out and you wait for another opportunity. Little fish are sweet. In this kind of a market, it's very difficult to actually find value. There are one or two pockets, but it's little, very little pockets that are there, and it's hard to find. So the Feds yesterday come out with also a statement saying there's going to be no interest rates for many years to come. So aged people like myself can't get any. A couple of years ago, thought we're doing okay, getting 2.5% on treasury bonds. Well, that's all disappeared now. And if you take a 2-year treasury bond out, you're not even getting 0.14%. CDs you can't get from the banks anymore. That's disappeared. So what are you going to do with money? Well, one thing is you've got to realize, the more interest you're going to be getting, the bigger risk you're taking. Because things are at parity at the moment, more or less at zero. So anything above that carries a risk with it. If you're of an age where you can't afford to lose money, and you have enough money to live on for the rest of your life, then you don't need to get involved in it at all. Just sit tight with what you've got, wait for opportunities to come along, and sure enough, opportunities will come along, and you'll be able to invest in sound companies with low PE valuations and build up a little nest egg that way. That's how you start. You don't start from buying high and waiting for the markets to come down. You start by buying low and selling somewhere in between and never waiting for the high. That's the investment little bit of practicality that comes from the intelligence that I've lived all my life. I've been in the market 50 years. I think I told Kevin before, I retired at 46 years of age. I grew out in my own business. And I'm just saying that to prove that it's all doable. And I've read no books in my life. Again, a true fact. None of this has come from any other book or any other philosophy. It's come from what I've been talking about, that universal energy and intelligence. You may or may not believe it, but it happens to be true. And the next element is happiness. I won't go into the business side of things and running a corporation, the ethics, and I say we can go on a long time, but each segment and each one will take time to explain. But I'm just trying to patter over a few little points. The next point is happiness. Now, we all want to live a happy life. You don't have to pursue it. You've already got the love and joy within you. But joy isn't happiness. Joy is far greater than that. Happiness is derived from pleasure. And pleasure comes from things. So you get pleasure buying a new car. You get pleasure when you want to buy a new computer. But the pleasure is fleeting. You get a new car with all the gadgets in it. Before you know it, you're not even looking at the gadgets. You're just driving the car. But before you bought it, all those gadgets were important to you. And then there's relationships. You think you're going to gain happiness by falling in love, finding a partner, and you're going to rely on that partner to make you happy. You think that's what you're looking for. But if you don't have the love within you and the joy within you, then you're not going to find the right partner for sure. And it'll end up in divorce. And that's why 50% of all marriages end up in divorce, because the wrong elements were in play. They didn't focus in, and they didn't know how to focus in. See, once the mind is conditioned, once the mind thinks it knows something, once it's got its ideas, it's very difficult to dislodge it. Once these ideas are set, it can be set in stone. And then that gets back to maybe a religious belief that has caused deaths of millions of people over the centuries. With political beliefs, which again cause wars. We've had 2 world wars in the past 100 years. And we've kind of missed out on that. Unless you were born before 1945, you missed out on the Second World War. So in our lifetime, we've not really experienced a world war. And if you look at the pandemic today, I think a world war would be a little bit more serious thing to contend with, especially when I came from Manchester, England, and the Germans were bombing our area, and my parents lived in a little shoe shop. My grandfather was a cobble shoemaker, and across the road there was a little piece of ground. It's been there a long time, and from Manchester, it rains a lot. The ground was sodden, and a bomb dropped in the ground. It never exploded. Now, had it exploded, all my family would have been wiped out, and this would be a ghost talking to you now. So something happened to prevent that bomb going off. And if you look back in your life, you'll find there were times in it when, if you had taken a different route than you did take, there could have been an extreme danger for you, and something could have happened to you that would take you off Earth. Everybody's had those experiences. There's something that goes on, and something that comes into the mind that takes us on a path that stirs us clear of it. And it's that something, that reality of that something, that is truly real and is truly part of our being. Now, we can refer to it as instinct, as intuition. We sensed something was going to happen, so we ducked out of the way. Again, I'll give you another one of my life experiences. I don't like talking about me. I said I wasn't going to, but I don't rehearse anything. So I was driving along the highway back in England. We were going from Manchester to London, and there was a big truck in front of us, full of big iron girders, big long truck. And for some reason, I always used to drive fast. I thought to myself, this doesn't look good to me. So I'm pulled into the inside lane. There was no particular reason why I was doing it. I couldn't think why I was doing it. I zoomed past him, went back on the outside lane, and within 5 seconds, all those girders came off the lorry, off the truck, and there was a massive pileup right behind me. Now, what was it that went into my head that took me away from that? I can give you hundreds of those experiences I've had in my life, some on a similar level and some not quite as severe as that. And if you analyze your life, the older you get, the more you'll find those experiences will predominantly played something in your life. And if you go back a little bit further than our lives, just think of it this way. All our ancestors that go back thousands of years, all the stock that we come from, we don't know who those people are. Some people might do a search and find out some of their ancestors. We can only go back so far. But all those ancestors all had to deal with situations. And if just one of them had taken the wrong turn, then we wouldn't be the person that we are today. Our DNA would be different. Our genes would be different. And we just wouldn't be the same. We'll be somebody else. So physically, we are this being that we're living, this person that we deem ourselves to be. And we give thanks and homage to all our ancestors that got us to this point. Now, they haven't gone away. They're still with us. Love never dies, and that essence is still within us. So just for their sake, and for the sake of the loved ones that we've known that passed over, don't you think it's worthwhile to live in a state of love and joy for them, if not for ourselves? Because they're just as with us just as much. Because energy can never disappear. And that energy is infused in every single cell of our body. If we're not living it for ourselves and live it for our ancestors, for our loved ones that passed over, if our parents have passed over, that love is still with us. The love of our mother and father still stays within us. It's an essence of purity that cannot disappear. So understand that physically they've gone, but if you understand there is no death and there is no birth, then there can be no loss. And if there's no loss, there's nothing to worry about. There's nothing to grieve. Because the older we get, as we look at the past, we see a shortened past, sorry, a lengthened past, and a very shortened future. I'm 75, so 3/4 of us gone. And if I get another 25 years in, if I can block in for another 25 years, I kind of programmed it in and maybe get to 110 if that's doable. That's what I've programmed into my head. That's what I might be gone tomorrow. But if some people say, when I see my children married, I'm happy to pass over. And they do. You can actually time your own death. But if you start to think in a more upbeat way and say, I'm going to live to 110, try and make it to 100, and I'll extend it for another 10 years in a fertile mind without having to succumb to Alzheimer's or dementia. Because the brain is a muscle, and the more we keep adding a creativity to it, the more it's going to develop itself. And on that note, I just finish by saying that the love and joy within us is paramount. It's our identity. We're not the role players we play. We're not the ego. We're not the intellect. We are the intelligence and the energy that fuels the love and joy. It's a partnership. And that is our true identity. And when we personally identify with it, then the rest is just a walk in the park. And every moment that we're on earth is a delight. Even when things are going on, circumstances are going on that we don't particularly care for, whether it be political, whether it be disease, whether it be pandemics, all that stuff, we might not particularly care for it, but it's still a delight to experience it. It's a delight to experience every precious moment that we have on planet Earth. Because each precious moment never comes back. When I just said that moment's gone. So each moment is our precious gems. That's the true riches that makes a human being human. Now, I'll open up for questions. If anybody would like to ask me anything that they've been thinking about throughout their life, anything that I've been talking about, anything at all pertaining to living a human existence on Earth.
I'm going to unmute everyone, so you'll be able to ask questions if I can. Oh, might not be as easy as I thought. You can unmute yourselves with the mute little microphone in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. If you bring your mouse down there, you'll see that. Okay, I see several people are unmuting themselves. That's great. Any questions? There we go. Gail, did you have a question for Michael?
I just want to say that I've enjoyed. He's been awesome. I'm right there with him and thinking that way, but to discover how to get there, I think about it every day. So what he's saying is amazing. I'm glad he shared it because the world has to hear it. And I'm just, it's like, how do you navigate to get there?
Okay, well, okay, so you want to know how to navigate to get to the point where you're in that state of love and joy. Well, the first thing to understand is you inherited it at birth. Everybody does. All life forms inherit it. So it's your inheritance. Now, do you want to live your inheritance while you're alive, or do you want to live the thought process that's trying to distract you from living it? Now, if you had a next door neighbor, and the next door neighbor was creating a fuss, banging up and down and not allowing you to sleep at night, how would you handle it? Well, you try and reason with them. And if you couldn't reason with them, then you might have to call in the law and get them to shut up. Now, with our own brains, we can try reasoning with it, but reasoning, it's very difficult to reason with it because it's dominant. The ego is dominant. It wants to be the master. Yet once it becomes the server, it's far more happy. Well, as long as it's the master, it's got a hard task, and it becomes a taskmaster that we've got to follow. But if we allow the ego to start to become the server, then we don't need to follow it anymore. And it actually follows our intelligence. It guides it, and it's much happier that way. So it gets out the driving seat and it sits in the back and becomes a passenger. That's how we do it with the reasoning of the mind. But then I mentioned calling in the law. Well, you can't call in the law to get into your head, but you can call on universal laws that have been around forever. And there are a lot of sages in the past, and there's ways of communicating with that universal energy subconsciously that can turn on that power within us. And when the light and the power is turned on, slowly but surely, it makes it a lot easier. I'm going to finish the talk today, when after question time, with a couple of metaphysical poems that'll help you turn on the light. So we're going to do a kind of a meditation and something practical that can help you, Gail, to sense and feel what I'm talking about in a truer aspect of it, rather than just me. See, me just talking about it isn't going to do anything for anybody. You got to become the experiencer and the witness of your own life, rather than being the participant in it, the dominant participant. And when you become the witness to it, then you are detached from your torment monger. The torment monger wants to distract you all the time. So you are trying, and you've probably gone quite a long way. You've probably read some books, and you're doing the best you can at this moment in time. It gets better the less you stop. When you stop trying and stop chasing and stop pursuing after the truth, then you find the truth was here within you all the time. You don't have to go looking around everywhere for it. There's a story of a guy is out in the street and he's got his head down and he's looking for something. And he's under a lamp and he's looking all over for it. And somebody, passerby, comes by and says, "What are you doing?" He said, "Oh, I've lost my keys." He said, "Oh, you've lost your keys?" He said, "How long have you been looking?" Well, he said, "I've been looking for over an hour for them, all around this area." He says, "And you lost them around here?" He says, "No, I didn't lose them around here. I lost them around the corner." He says, "Well, why are you looking here?" He says, "Because the light's on here. There's no light around the corner. It's dark." You see, in the darkness is where the light can be switched on. It's where we can find things. But if the light's blazing into us all the time, then we're too dazzled by it. And our intellect is far too clever for us and dazzles us far too much and doesn't want to be ignored. So it's a contender. It wants to contest its own intelligence, and it never can. It can never win. Intellect can never, ever guide intelligence. Today you've got IT, artificial intelligence. Well, intelligence can never be artificial. What they should be calling it is artificial intellect. It's artificial intellectual knowledge in a high-tech sphere that we're using. But it certainly is not intelligence, and intelligence is totally the wrong word for it. Anybody else got any questions?
You can unmute yourselves, or you can write the question in chat. Anyone having a hard time unmuting themselves?
Don't worry about the questions and thinking it's a silly question. There's no such thing as silly questions. The only silly questions are the questions that are never being asked.
Okay. All right, then I guess I think we're ready for those poems that you were talking about.
Okay, well, it'll give me a little bit more time to maybe do more than I thought I was going to do. So this is a book I wrote very recently, and it's called Solo on Inspirational Poetry. It's got a number, about 75 poems. Some are quite deep, to do with metaphysics and the universe. Some are quite simple, and some take our mind on a nice journey. So if you want to take a nice deep breath, make sure your both feet are on the ground, that you're grounded. Just relax. Feel any tension leaving your body, but be aware of your surroundings. And slowly drift into a zone of nothingness without any preconceived ideas, this, that, or the other. Let your mind free and wander where it may. You can close your eyes if you want, keep them open if you want. And let's slowly drift off into the first poem, The Joy of Blue. And all good things come out of the blue. We lived in a field of dreams and thought, treasures on earth that cannot be bought, flights of exultation on the wings of height, waves of joy giving strength and might, unforgettable bliss, no want of need, motions drifting away from human greed, forever young, an endless mystical clock, blue band waves sail to a timeless flock. In an open aura shines a galaxy of light. Mona Lisa's smile cascades from spirit's sight. Sparks of brilliance from invisible rays, zaps of white light, vessels all ablaze. Newborn babies, sensation of pure delight, innocence and peace, joy the devil cannot fight. Thoughts of joy, keep peace and control. Loving gifts reside in the eternal exotic soul. And we'll have a few moments of silence. And now we're going to drift off now into the blissful silence. In the silence of my thought-free mind, I leave the pettiness of condition behind. I feel the exaltation of God's kiss. I truly am in a wondrous, divine bliss. In my peaceful harmony, I immerse, floating, weightless, throughout the universe. I feel the comfort of a glowing ember in a timeless world, an ecstasy to remember. One on one, God as God in a field of gold, an endless flowing stream, never feeling old. Worth more than all the treasures can bestow. I rise up in an everlasting, eternal glow. In this state of mind, beauty is all I find. This is the cosmos gift for all humankind. It's time to light the sacred torch. Don't be frightened. In silent meditation, you will be enlightened. We'll have another few moments of silence. And now we're going to drift off to the land where souls play. An awakening to dawn mist on the water. Flowing spirits, streams to God's altar. Purifying essence whistles through the trees. Images of the sacred blowing in the breeze. Lights of fancy from birds up high. Feathers of many colours filtering through the sky. Sun, moon and stars envelops earth's dome. We're all birds of a feather, finding our way home. Spectacles of mesmerising movements flashing in the mind. Melting pots of humans, secrets are to find. Love all embracing, whispers on the wind. No physical presence. Ecstasy from a light dim. Gifts of joy enmeshed in music and dance. Visualizing images filtering in a trance. Warriors in a drumbeat at journey's end. Back to the womb of creation, active in an essence blend. Wondrous dreams in the stillness of the dark. Journey and uplifting voyages in Paradise Park. Thunder and lightning points the way. A prelude to the land where souls play. And have a little bit more silence. And we'll finish up with a nice upbeat poem. And now we're going to be a happy hobby horse. Let's raise our glasses and make a toast to a simple pastime we embrace the most. Joy is our hobby, or a powerful force, entering the human race as a happy hobby horse. Contentment of living should never be a wager. Keep a steady pace. Don't become a galloping major. Jockeying for position could make us interfere. in a celebration of life, which we all hold so dear. Steering our course on the right track, reining in the anxiety that sometimes does attack. A smile on our face will be in the frame. A photo finish winner, more happiness will be our gain. Every moment of pleasure, no whip to crack. With love on our saddle, there's no looking back. Cantering up the straight, gifts of wonderment unfold, jumping over the hurdles, led by an intelligent soul of gold.
That was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. I want to open up or allow you to open up your mics if you have any comments for Michael at all before we end this wonderful presentation. Anyone have any comments? You guys having a hard time with your mics? I don't know. Oh. Oh, Gail. Okay.
I don't have anything to say. I just want to say that thank you, Michael. It was awesome. Thank you for sharing. And Kevin, thank you for having him. It was wonderful. I can't say anything more.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
We have been recording this. We'll have a recording available later so you can re-listen to this. And those who missed this can listen to this as well. Anybody else? Okay, with that, then, Michael, I want to thank you very much for this wonderful evening. Those poems were just incredible, by the way. Phenomenal. So I thank you for that.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate the invite. I appreciate the people that have taken time to come to listen. I will say to the people, don't take what I've said today at all, not one word of it, apart from maybe the poetry for relaxation. But don't take anything I was saying for granted. It's just maybe one person's opinion. So try and find for yourself what I was talking about. Do your own research into it. Look further, and you will totally amaze yourself. It really is totally incredible. This existence is an incredible existence. Not 1 second should ever be wasted.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you, Michael, and thank you, everyone, for attending.